Hey everybody, what is good? Welcome back. We're gonna be talking about today Unit 3, Lesson 3, Exploration 2. So now we're gonna be talking a little bit about food chains, food webs, how energy is gonna move, how organisms are gonna get energy. And as you can see, this first little bold part that I've highlighted is that all organisms need a source of energy to survive. We talked about photosynthesis. In photosynthesis, plants are going to take in sunlight energy and they're going to create sugar. And then they are going to use that sugar in turn to survive. Also, we talked about cellular respiration. And cellular respiration is the process of where organisms that eat, consumers, right, are going to take in that sugar and we're going to turn it into ATP, right? And we're going to be able to use that energy. So all organisms need energy in order to survive. That's one of those characteristics of life that we talked about the very first week of school. So energy in ecosystems, it's going to follow the law of conservation of energy that states that energy and matter cannot be created nor destroyed. Energy is just going to change forms as it flows through an ecosystem, right? Or through living organisms. So energy is not going to, we cannot just create it, and it can't just go away. It's got to go somewhere. So a lot of these organisms, as we talked about in cellular respiration, are going to maintain that usable energy, but then they're also going to give off energy as heat back into the environment. So as we scroll down here, the first thing that we want to talk about is I want to show this video of this kingfisher. It's a bird. I just think it's a really cool video. So that bird goes down in there, sees that fish, goes down, and is able to get it, and then get out of the water before a predator can get it. And so I just think that's there's relationships like that all over the world in all sorts of different biomes and all sorts of different ecosystems where organisms have found their niche, their place, their way to survive by being able to do special things like that. So I just thought that was really cool. As we scroll down here, an ecosystem is a complex web of interconnected biotic and abiotic components. That's a perfect example of using abiotic factors, the water, in order to survive. And a complex web is going to be an understatement. It's going to work together. And the key is that changing one component of that ecosystem could affect others. Right now, humans are controlling this planet. We use it for our benefit. I think that a lot of times we think about other organisms, but it comes secondary to our benefit. And because of that, we are changing many ecosystems because of the downfalls of what we're doing. They may not be intended. We may not be doing them on purpose, but humans are creating a lot of different changes in ecosystems that are causing a rippling effect across the entire ecosystem. So it's something to think about. The first, we want to talk about food chains and food webs. So food chains are the most simple way to look at how energy is transferred. And what we've got is they always start with producers. Producers are going to take in sunlight energy and they're going to create that sugar. It's the starting point. But then we're going to start going into consumers. So the first one is the herbivore. Remember, the herbivores are organisms that are going to eat producers. And then the next is going to be the carnivore. There could be another carnivore over here and maybe even another carnivore over there. Okay, and then maybe a detrivore at the end. So here's what those things are. So a food chain, by definition, is a model that links the behavior of their feeding relationships. And what we're talking about in a food chain is this brings in sunlight energy, but then this eats this eats this, and we continue as long as that food chain goes. A consumer. A consumer is an organism that's going to get its energy by eating other organisms, right? It's going to eat. And here are the examples of consumers. So one of them is an herbivore, right? An herbivore is an organism that only eats plants. A carnivore is an organism that only eats other heterotrophs or eats other animals. And then we have the omnivore that can eat both producers and other consumers. Humans are an example of omnivore, right? We can eat vegetables, we can eat fruits, but then we can also turn around and eat other consumers, things like chicken, beef, pigs, things like that. A detrivore. A detritivore is an organism that is going to eat detritus or dead organic matter. These are your vultures, right? These are the organisms that are going to eat not break down. They are going to eat dead organisms. They are scavengers. Okay? Now, decomposers, these are going to be organisms that break down organic matter into simpler compounds. These are your decomposers. These are your bacteria, right? These are your fungi, microbes in the soil, earthworms. These are decomposers. They are going to take carbon-based molecules, organic molecules, and they're going to break them down into simpler molecules in the soil. As we scroll down, here's just a few pictures. You got herbivores eating the grass. You've got the carnivore eating the herbivore, right? You've got omnivores like bears and humans that can eat both. And then you've got your detritivore. Here's your vulture that is scavenging, right? It's eating a dead carcass. And then you've got your decomposers like your mushrooms and other fungi that are going to break down carbon-based molecules in the soil. All right, now let's talk about trophic levels. Trophic levels are the levels at which energy is passed in a food chain. Okay, so the number of trophic levels has to do with the number of times the energy is transferred. Now, here's a little food pyramid, and I want to go ahead and construct this. So we've got these organisms to kind of drag and drop. We know that this lily pad is going to be a producer, so that's going to fit into that producer's spot. Now, one of these is going to be a primary consumer, which we also call an herbivore, and we know that a rabbit is going to eat plants, going to eat producers. Okay, now the next one is, what level at which are we going to be for the snake and the bird? Now we know that the bird can eat the snake, so that's going to help us fit, right? However, a snake could eat a frog, and then the frog could also, or then the eagle could eat the frog or the snake. However, at this level, what this is saying is that this eagle has an opportunity to eat this frog. So there is what our food pyramid would look like. We have our producers. Now notice that it's going to be a pyramid. And what that means is that this ecosystem can only sustain a smaller number of organisms as we move up, because we know that this rabbit and this fish and grasshopper and snail, they need to eat multiple producers in order to get enough energy to survive, right? So we can't just be one for one, right? One plant doesn't sustain one rabbit. We need multiple plants to sustain one rabbit. We need multiple plants for the fish to eat. We need multiple plants, right, for these organisms. Same up here. This snake cannot survive on this one rabbit. This frog cannot survive on this one grasshopper. They need to eat multiple organisms. This bird cannot survive by eating one snake. It needs to eat multiple things in this ecosystem. And that's why as we move in, that's why it moves. We can only provide less of the larger organisms. Okay, so as we scroll down here, this is what we were just talking about at a pyramid, right? In order to provide enough energy for 4 tertiary consumers, so for 4 eagles, we would need almost 100,000 secondary consumers, snakes and frogs. In order to provide those, we would need over 700,000 of the herbivores. And in order for that, we need this many producers, okay? And we're talking about population count. And that's just unbelievable to think about this many, but that's the way it works. Okay, the next one is a food web. Now, all a food web is a collection of food chains that are intermixed. So here we've got all sorts of different organisms, right? Here is a producer, okay? Here is a producer, and they're going to be eaten. Whenever in a food web, whenever you see, the arrow always points to the organism that's eating, right? So this reef shark is going to be eating the triggerfish. It's also going to be eating the parrotfish. This sea turtle is going to be eating the algae, okay? And that's its only source of food. Okay, this sea sponge is going to be eating zooplankton, and it's going to be eating phytoplankton. All right, so anytime you see an arrow going to it, this shrimp is going to eat the phytoplankton, but then it is going to be eaten by the triggerfish, and it's going to be eaten by the jellyfish. That's how you read a food web. So a food web, by definition, is a model that shows the complex networks and feeding relationships within an ecosystem. And they can be very complex. Okay? All right, so that finishes Unit 3, Lesson 3, Exploration 2. And I can't wait to see you guys again.